Let's talk about Genesis 8 through 10. I'm going to assume if you're watching this Genesis 8 through 10 video, you have probably seen the videos for Genesis 1 through 7. So you basically know what's going on up to this point. In the last video, we started talking about the story of the flood, which is one of the most famous stories in the entire Bible, but is also one of the most misunderstood and misquoted stories in all of Scripture. We get kind of the children's Sunday school version of it, and then that's just sort of it. But the flood story is actually kind of one of the key stories in understanding the big story that the Scriptures are telling. What am I talking about? Here's what I'm talking about. We left off in our last video with a really simple kind of cliffhanger. It's that the flood story is answering a question we may or may not have even thought to ask. And that is, why doesn't God just destroy all the bad people and then start over with the good people? Why doesn't God just destroy all the unrighteous people and then start over with the righteous few who managed to make the cut? Why doesn't God just destroy all the people who are in rebellion against him and then start back from scratch with the people who are faithful to him, the people who submit to him? That's the question that Genesis 6 through 10 all together are answering. And the way it does it is by recounting the way this is a real thing that actually happened in history. The story of the flood is not just a fable. It is not just folklore. It is written as what's called archetypal history, like we've talked about. It's written as primeval history. So this is hard to wrap our minds around, but this is written in the same sort of literary style as myth, but it is not fiction. It is real history that actually took place. And actually, I would point out that the fact that basically every major religion from the ancient world has some version of the flood story tells us that probably there was actually a flood. So it recounts this historical story where God floods the earth, but first, he puts out the call and says, there is going to be a massive flood that is going to wipe out all life on earth. If you want to live, build this ark and then get inside it. And the only one who listened is Noah and his family. And so by listening to that warning and then building the ark and then getting in the ark, that is an act of faith. Noah and his family are demonstrating their faith in the Lord. And so what God is doing is he is taking the faithful few, rescuing them from his righteous judgment through the flood, and then he is starting over, so to speak, using this faithful few as the new sort of patient zero for a new humanity, a new world, a new creation. This is a relaunched creation, and we see that in the way that throughout this whole story, Genesis 6 through 10, it keeps repeating. They waited 7 days on the ark. They waited 7 days after sending the bird out before it came back, and then 7 more days when they sent it out again, and then 7 more days, and then sent it out again, and on and on and on. They keep echoing what? The 7 days of creation from Genesis 1. The point is, in the flood, he is decreating the world that had grown so corrupt, so distorted, that it was in radical rebellion against him. He's decreating the world in rebellion, and he is recreating with Noah and his family as the sort of new Adam figures. the new Eve figures of this relaunched creation. And so the flood comes. We talked about the flood lasts a very long time. It rains for 40 days and 40 nights, but then the waters of the flood are still there for a very long time after that. But that 40 days and 40 nights of rain, that's a common recurring image all throughout God's word. When we see 40 days, 40 nights, this period of 40 days or 40 years or 40 generations or whatever, often that means a number of things, but most of the time it's a reference to like refining. We're being refined in the wilderness over 40 years. We're being refined out in the desert over 40 days. We're being refined over 40 days and 40 nights as the flood waters rage on. Humanity is being refined. Creation is being refined. All that is in rebellion is being cold and refined out of the mix, so that the relaunched creation is a refined creation and a refined humanity in a very limited sense. He is destroying all the wicked, and he is relaunching creation with only the faithful few as a part of it. And so the question is, what happens if God does that? That should fix the world, shouldn't it? That should heal what is broken, shouldn't it? This is basically kind of the CIA mindset, right? If we just assassinate that dictator, if we just go kidnap that one over there, if we just go destabilize this regime, if we just go get rid of those guys who are not in our interests and we replace them with our own guys, then things ought to turn out okay, right? It never does. God is intentionally showing us through this that destroying the wicked is not enough to fix the world. We need more. You cannot simply subtract sin from our world and it be okay. You have to redeem our world. You have to restore our world. The point of the flood story is that the flood is not enough. Judgment is not enough. The righteous wrath of a holy God is righteous, it is good, but wrath itself is not enough to heal God's world. And it shows us this in a really specific way. First, we see Noah and his family waiting on the ark. The waters are starting to recede, and so they send a bird out to see if enough land has started to open up that they can come back out and start to settle again. They send the bird out and no luck. They wait a while. They send the bird out again. Still no luck. They wait a while. They send the bird out again. They just keep doing this over and over and over until eventually it comes back and it's got specifically an olive branch in its beak. Now that actually really matters. Why does that matter? It's because olive branches grow on olive trees, and these are actually notoriously difficult to grow. An olive tree needs not only a lot of moisture, which would not be in short supply since there was a flood, but also a lot of sun. It needs a lot of heat. It needs a lot of consistency. It needs all these different things together. What does that mean? It means olive trees are not going to start growing successfully until the flood waters have completely receded and the seasons have begun again regularly. And so when this bird brings back this olive branch, that means not only is the flood over, but also spring, summer, fall, and winter have begun running normally once again. The conditions that are necessary for an olive tree to grow have resumed. And so creation is back. It has resumed its good purpose. The fields are plantable, tillable, sowable, reapable once again. And so they come down out of the ark, they go and they start to settle on the land. They're settling in the relaunched creation as the relaunched humanity built out of the faithful few. And as they do that, God reaffirms the creation mandate from Genesis chapter 1. Go be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Go cultivate the earth, go steward the earth, go augment the earth, enhance the earth, go build the world, fill it with humans. Go carry out your calling as my kingly images, kingly regents. Go be the hands and feet by which I rule the earth. And so Noah and his family, they are the newly relaunched humanity. They have God's image and the calling God has given to us as his image. And so just like Adam and Eve in the garden, they are responsible for carrying out the work, carrying out agriculture, creating technologies, and so on and so forth, building a society that looks like the goodness of the Lord. And in very much the same way, Noah and his family are like Adam and Eve in the sense that they are priests in this relaunched creation. The relaunched humanity is a priestly humanity, just like Adam and Eve were. So Noah and his family, they are leading worship. They are leading the rest of creation in lifting the Lord up in worship. And we see that in the way that Noah gets off the ark and he makes a sacrifice. It says that God smelled the pleasing aroma of the sacrifice and was wrathful no more. That doesn't mean that God literally, he was dysregulated and pissed off, and then they cooked something up for him and he smelled how good it smelled, and then he was over it. He got his head back straight. That's not what it's actually saying. This is something called anthropopathism. Essentially, in the ancient Near East, they would often write about God in language that sounds kind of like the language of human limitations. So God was angry, or God was sad, or God regretted that he made humanity, like in Genesis 6. And now God smelled the pleasing aroma and his anger was no more. None of these are meant to be taken hyperliterally. This is human language that we understand. This is the language of human emotion that we naturally understand, that makes sense to us. But the point here is simply that God was righteously filled with holy wrath at the wickedness of humanity and how corrupt and distorted the human world had become before the fall. And now that wrath has been satisfied. He is showing mercy to Noah and his family. He's showing grace to this relaunched humanity. But then one of the most important things in the entire flood story happens. And that is that God starts to lay down some ground rules. He lays down some safeguards, for lack of a better word. He says a number of things. He says, number one, from now on, you must not eat animals with the blood still in them, for the life is in the blood. What's happening here is this. God is laying down safeguards and ground rules specifically in order to communicate that this relaunched creation must be different from the distorted creation before the fall. This relaunched humanity has to be different than the distorted, corrupted humanity that God destroyed in the flood. I think a moment ago I might have said fall when I meant to say flood. I was talking about the distorted creation before the flood. What was wrong with the world before the flood? What was wrong was that there was zero value to human life. Look at the way it describes humanity in Genesis 4 and 5. It wasn't just that Cain killed his brother. Cain's descendants became conquest tribes. Lamech gathered up wives like Boy Scout badges. He treated those wives like property, like they had no value. He treated human life like it had no value. Anyone who wronged him, he would kill in retaliation. If someone struck him, he would murder them. If someone killed him, his family would go and kill the entire family of the people who killed him, the entire tribe of the people who killed him, the entire village of the people who killed him. There was this cycle of never-ending violence because there was zero value placed onto human life or any life. And so God says what? He says, don't eat any animals that still have their blood because the life is in the blood. Now, it's important to know that in the ancient Near East, they literally believed the life was in the blood. They believed that in some sense, your blood was your life. It was kind of a visual symbol for your life. And so if you were to consume someone else's blood, it was as if you were eating their life, metaphorically speaking. And so God says you can't eat anything that has its blood in it because that life is in the blood, because that life belongs to the Lord. This is strange, but it's simple. He's teaching them to think very differently about the value of life. He's saying the life belongs to God alone. Therefore, you cannot simply consume it. Life belongs to God alone. Therefore, you can't flippantly take it. You can't just kill anyone you want to kill. You can't even just kill any animal you want to kill. Any and all bloodshed has to happen within the limitations and constraints that have been placed on us by the Lord. And he says very specifically, any human who murders another human must be put to death. Why is that? It's simple. It's because if you let Lamech keep on slaughtering whole villages in retaliation against somebody who struck him, you get a never-ending cycle of violence. You need to put Lamech down before he creates a never-ending spiral. They say if you murder someone, we will kill you. If you murder someone, we will end you in response. Human life is so valuable that we will kill you to stop you from constantly taking it for no reason. Human life is so valuable that we will take your life in order to protect all of their lives. And so ironically, this is the death penalty, but it's actually meant to stop the endless cycle of violence, not perpetuate it. The point is to stop this relaunched creation from spiraling out into the same endless cycle of violence with zero value placed on human life, zero respect for the image of God in human life that characterized the world that descended from Cain. These are safeguards against a Cain-style culture taking over this newly relaunched creation and humanity. And yet these exact safeguards, they're good, but they are a demonstration of the fact that the flood didn't work. If the goal of the flood was fix the world, the flood did not work. If the goal of the flood was heal what is wrong with the world, it didn't work. Here's the thing though, that's the point. It's not that God was trying really hard to fix the world and it just, this chance failed, so then he had to try something else. No, the point of the flood was not only to righteously judge the wicked. The point of the flood was to show this thing that you guys keep telling me I should do doesn't work. The thing that you guys think should be the solution is not the solution. The reality is most people think the problems with the world are somebody else, and that if God would just do something about those other people, then it would fix everything. If God would just kill all those people who were part of Epstein's little trafficking ring, then everything would be fine. If God would just kill all those politicians who were doing this stuff, then it'd be fine. If God would just kill all the rich whatchamacallits who hoard all the wealth and power and influence and blah, 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 then everything would be fine. Well, actually, no, it wouldn't. Those are not the things keeping the world broken. They're part of the equation, but killing them is not the solution. Because the reality is that the thing that keeps the world broken day in and day out is not just those bad guys over there. It's you and me. It's all of us. It says the world is still not fixed. And we see that in the fact that it says, the dread of you will be in every animal. That's actually different from what God said in Genesis 2 and 3. We were the stewards over the animals. We ruled them. They didn't dread us. We were priests over the animals. We were leading the animals in worship, but they weren't afraid of us. We are meant to be the loving stewards of creation, but now instead he says, the dread, the fear of you will be in every animal. And so the world still actually is not back to the way it's supposed to be, even though the wicked have been destroyed. It's saying the flood did not fix the world. In exactly the same way, we see it in what happens to Noah. It says after they've settled on the land, relaunched humanity, relaunched creation with the righteous few, Noah lapses into addiction. Noah becomes a drunkard. Noah succumbs to his own brokenness. Noah may be a righteous man compared to the wickedness of the world pre-flood, but Noah is still fallen and broken. He still has a sinful nature. And more than that, we see it in what Noah's son Ham does. It says Ham found Noah while he was drunk and he uncovered his nakedness. Now, this is actually a really uncomfortable thing. It could mean a number of things. One was that in the ancient Near East, it was considered disrespectful to even see your father naked in a lot of cultures. So it could be that this is literally just he saw his father naked and he actively seemed to like take pleasure in the fact that he was humiliating his father. And then he went and he got his brothers to go look and see his father naked too. So he's actively disrespecting him. He's actively exploiting his father. So it could be as simple as that. One thing that some scholars have pointed out is that the language that it's using here is actually also the same language you would use for something like sexual assault. You would sometimes describe raping someone as uncovering their nakedness. Now, not always, but that was one of the ways that you would sometimes describe rape in the ancient Near East. So it's actually entirely possible that this is even going as far as to say that Ham found his father drunk and raped his unconscious body. That's really uncomfortable, but it is one of the possibilities. It's important for us to know about that. But it is actually also possible, there's a third one, a number of scholars have discovered ancient Near Eastern writings where it uses the phrase uncovered his nakedness to describe sleeping with someone's wife. So it is possible that what's happening here is that Ham found Noah drunk and unconscious and went and slept with Noah's wife. So his own mother, it's possible that he raped his own mother. We don't know exactly which one it is. But in any of those three situations, the point is Ham has purposefully exploited his father's weakness. Ham is acting like the wicked descendants of Cain. He is acting like the people before the flood. And so Noah curses Ham. He curses Ham's line. But it's really important that we don't misunderstand this, because when this happens, it's like the curse God delivers in Genesis chapter 3. We talked in the Genesis 3 video about the fact that when God issues this curse on humanity and on creation, it's not him saying, I'm mad, so I am doing these bad things to you. When he issues that curse, it's better to understand it as a lament. God is lamenting that creation now will be broken. He's lamenting that humanity now will be fallen and broken and saddled with a sinful nature. He's lamenting that now humanity will be separated from God. He's lamenting that now humanity will be condemned. This is God sadly lamenting these things. And in the same way, Noah is sadly lamenting what all of this means for his sons and what it means for the future of this relaunched creation. He says, the sons of Ham will be servants to the sons of Shem and Japheth. They'll be slaves. The sons of Ham will be at war against them. The sons of Ham will be in constant conflict with them. The sons of Ham will be constantly divided from them. And on and on and on. What is he describing? He's describing a world that is just like the pre-flood world, saying the world is going to become exactly like it was before the flood. Ham has introduced exploitation, cruelty, injustice into this freshly relaunched world. God destroyed the wicked, but it didn't remove wickedness from the world, because there is wickedness in the human heart. There's wickedness in the sinful nature we have. And so we carried that sinful nature onto the ark and into the relaunched creation. And it is going to infect creation just like it did before the flood. And we see that all throughout Genesis chapter 10, because it says that Noah's descendants do not go on to build a just and righteous world that matches God's goodness. Instead, Noah's descendants grow into the wicked empire Egypt, the wicked nation Sodom, the wicked conquest confederacy called Canaan, and on and on and on. Ham's descendant Nimrod builds this massive Cain-style conquest empire called Babel and a number of other ones. By the time Shem's descendant Peleg comes into the picture, it says the world is once again radically divided, just like it was before the flood. Everything gets just as bad as it was before. The flood solved nothing. But that is the point. That's the point of the story. Because God says, I will never again do this. I will never again annihilate all flesh. Instead, I'm going to preserve the world. I'm going to preserve the earth. Seed time and harvest will never go away. This world will never go away. I'm preserving this world, not destroying this world, because destruction isn't the answer. Redemption and restoration is. But the only way redemption and restoration can happen is for the long promised seed to come. Hey, what's up? It's Pastor Ryan from Mount Zion Baptist Church. I'm extremely glad that you watched our video, and I hope that the Lord used it to speak to you in a very powerful and specific way. Hit the like and subscribe buttons on this video so that you can keep up with everything that we put out and we come up a little bit higher in your algorithm, and send a personal message to our YouTube account. I would love to hear from you, get to know you, pray with you a little bit. Between now and then, take care.